Hello and welcome to episode 47 of Entertainment of Excellence, the podcast where I talk about films, TV, all of it. Hi, I'm Ollie.
I'm Thom.
And I'm Ben.
And today we're talking about the 2021 film Malcolm and Marie. This will contain spoilers.
Yeah, that sounds good. So this is a really difficult film for me to do a plot synopsis of. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to explain what's going on. So basically what happens is Malcolm is a filmmaker and he's just premiered a film and he goes home with his girlfriend Marie and then they shout at each other.
Yeah.
It's a lot to
And
get
they
your head
make up,
around.
And then they shout, and then they make up, and then they shout, and then...
It's like
maybe make up?
it's like Marriage Story but without the story.
all the marriage.
Yeah, all the colour.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the film did have one thing going for it that was a really nice aesthetic, but it didn't really have
things going for it.
It didn't really have much in the way of a story.
Well, I quite like the idea of just, you know, this window into two people's lives, like this relationship, and have something play out in real time. I think it probably has a lot of potential, but it does kind of fall short in the way that a lot of the points raised about the relationship don't really get a satisfying conclusion, or, you know, they sometimes make up very quickly, and a lot of ideas kind of brought up and then brushed over later.
Yeah. I think one of my main problems was kind of everything in this film had a pro and a con. So I feel like the dialogue was it was positive in the sense that it was really like powerful and there was some really memorable monologues kind of, but at the same time it wasn't really authentic or believable. It did seem like this is a script, this isn't really how people actually talk, and it felt similar with the acting. I feel like the performances from Zendaya and John David Washington were really convincing, and they're able to do really well with what they had, especially well, because basically it's kind of a back and forth. So when one of the characters is speaking, you just kind of have silence from the other one. But I also felt that they, like John David Washington especially, wasn't really a character. He was just kind of a mouthpiece for the director, and a lot of his performances, although this isn't really to do with him, it's probably more to do with the script. I felt they were quite hyperbolic and over the top at times, which I don't know. I just felt like it wasn't always the most realistic or convincing.
It's kind of worrying if Malcolm is like the mouthpiece for Sam Levinson, because Malcolm is kind of terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, he says such awful things to Marie and like uses things to his advantage, and seems to just be really unhinged and will just like scream at everything. And you know, he brings up so many things just to berate and belittle Marie.
Yeah,
so hopefully Sam Levinson isn't like that.
The thing is that I think both characters are like shown to be imperfect, and I don't think you're really meant to sympathise with one more than the other, but given they're both kind of terrible. But yeah, I can't help but feel that like I've forgotten the character's name. I'll just call him.
What?
What?
Is that a joke? I can't tell if you're joking.
I'm not.
They call Malcolm and Marie.
Oh. Shush, I'm quite tired.
Their names are in the title.
Shush, I never said anything. This is a train wreck of an episode. Okay, so Malcolm, right. So Malcolm's kind of a little bit more terrible, I think, because um, they both say things in their arguments that they clearly regret but don't want to admit they regret. But there's
Yeah.
one thing that stuck with me that Malcolm said, where he was shouting at Marie in the bathtub, and he said something about like she'd go back to like slitting her wrists with nail scissors, and like the fact that he just like used like self-harm as a tool to just win the argument is like such a
Yeah.
terrible thing to do.
No, I got that Malcolm was way worse than Marie.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was like, can you just break up with him and like go somewhere? This at the start, it's kind of like it feels like it tries to frame it as, oh, Marie's being a bit stroppy for no reason, but then as it goes on, you realise that actually she has a lot of reason to be. And obviously, she's not always in the right, but it feels like she's a lot less abusive than
Yeah.
Malcolm.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
I'd
think
say
the
that
film does really well at having the balance of like which character has the like upper hand in the argument. I'd say so. They both get equal shouting time.
Yeah, it sort of
Yeah,
alternates
at the
between
same
the two of
time,
them.
yeah, but there's like massive fluctuations, which I thought was really weird for kind of the tone and just the fact that like I didn't watch this film in one go, so when I came back to it, a couple of hours later, I couldn't remember whether they were still arguing or who was kind of had the upper hand or whether they were supposedly back together or whatever. But I feel like Malcolm is definitely presented as the most flawed character, but it's kind of interesting how Marie has that history of drug problems, and uh, obviously that's one of the big issues within the film because her main problem is that he didn't thank her in his speech, and you might think, well, that's a bit unreasonable, but to be honest, it's not because uh, she's also saying that the the film was based on her own experiences. So, but he's able to kind of glorify that and make it into something beautiful, whereas she has to suffer with the consequences.
Yeah.
So I think obviously they're both presented as having flaws, but I think just the fact that Malcolm is presented as so narcissistic and kind of obstinate, uh, as you were saying, it's kind of weird that he acts as the mouthpiece of Sam Levinson because he's such an unlikable character.
Yeah. I feel like one thing that you take away from this film is Sam Levinson really hated that one review of Assassination Nation.
Yeah.
Because apparently he said that he's surprised people drew parallels to that journalist, even though she is a white lady from the LA Times. It's like, can you? Is he that naive, or is he just lying? I don't know. He really rants at it for a long time, and I think
Yeah.
while there are like certain good points raised, about possibly forgiving some people for some things and not others, depending on like what their identity is. I get that, but they always make it sound like critics like shouldn't exist. It's like, well, they have like an obvious role to play in guiding the public of which films are worth watching and stuff. And also he had a weird thing of like not allowed to have your own interpretation of stuff, which is a bit weird.
Well, yeah, I think
You're just biased
bringing
because
back-
you're an amateur critic.
Oh no.
but bringing it back to what I was saying about how a lot of the things within this film kind of contradict each other. I felt that the criticism on critics and film reviewers
Critic section.
was kind of weird because at one point he's kind of saying that this film shouldn't be politicized just because it was written by a black person and it was about these issues, but he's saying it's not meant to be that. It's meant to be more about the personal experiences and the audience's reaction rather than its political significance. which I can kind of get behind. But then this whole thing about being anti-elitism and saying that these critics kind of put on this facade of being uh, like radical and kind of woke and understand, there's uh, a bit about like these extremist kind of socialist beliefs that isn't really the
Well, that's
case
the actor,
in
isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. But at the same time, this film feels very pretentious and very, just the fact that it's in black and white is trying to be like artsy, even reaching against, which I felt was kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, as you said at the start, so every sort of good thing about the film has a opposing bad thing. And well, I don't like the first thing I said about the film was like it had a nice aesthetic, and I liked the black and white, the fact it was shot on film, and the way the titles were and everything. But equally, there's no reason for it to be like that. It's not an artsy film, really. It's not like that was part of the reason. Like he was trying to convey this message through that medium or whatever. Like it just felt like he just did that for the hell of it, and it's really hard to criticize this film because I don't know what's like. I don't know how to sort of start because a lot of the stuff Malcolm says in the film, I don't know if that's genuinely what the director wanted for this film or whether he was trying to portray a caricature of something like bad. Because if you take it at face value and Malcolm is a mouthpiece for the director, then we shouldn't be focusing on the meaning behind stuff. We should just like take the fact that it's in black and white because he wanted to have it in black and white. But equally, Malcolm's just such a terrible character. It seems a bit counterintuitive that you'd portray your genuine beliefs through him. And it's like, and are we meant to be having our own interpretation of this, or are we completely missing his point? Or does he even have a point? It's like, where do you even start with
Yeah.
this?
Basically, okay, so I think the black and white is just because it looks cool, and you're allowed to just have something that looks cool. Or you could say like, oh, it's black and white, and Malcolm and Marie, boom, two people there, easy interpretation, done.
But it's
But
like,
I think a lot of
it
what
could be
he's trying to
something to
say.
do with.
Wait,
I think the black and
Go
white
on.
is could also be interpreted as it's all the films all kind of stripped back and minimalistic almost. So like partly obviously because it was filmed during the pandemic, so there's only two actors, I think a relatively small crew. So I guess that kind of just adds to that simplicity of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe you could
And I
read
would
into it and
say-
say it's because they only see things in black and white.
Yeah.
But I also want to say, like, I disagree that it isn't an artsy film because you don't often get like just two characters having a real-time conversation. I think that is fairly artsy in terms of not in the mainstream.
I guess so, but it's not. I don't really know how to word what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree with you. But
Yeah, it's.
yeah.
I don't feel it's because art usually I'm just not gonna say anything because I can't word my point right.
I'll talk about more stuff while.
Oh,
you
actually, I'll
think
just
about the
quickly say,
wording.
so it's also really hard to critique the film because a lot of the stuff mentioned in the fictional film that Malcolm directed is sort of mirrored in the actual Malcolm and Marie film. So, for example, there's a bit where Marie is talking to Malcolm and she's saying, "There's this scene in the film that's I thought was the best on paper, but the worst on screen because you had to go and show some nudity, and you had to have the woman's breasts out, and it's like, and she was going on like, well, maybe that was not really relevant, like that it would have been fine without, and he was arguing that that's just because that was what he wanted to do. And then like the second half of this film is just like Marie in like her underwear and like with nipples showing Tom. Don't know if you saw them. It's like
No.
there's a lot of like rather sensual shots and stuff, and it's like that kind of mirrors it. Was that really necessary for what the director wanted to do? Like, I
I
don't
think
know.
that a lot of the film is actually, rather than having a message, because it literally, I guess it's messages that movies don't have, or always have to have messages, but I felt like it was more supposed to just be this presentation of two characters, and as a thing of what you'd get out of film is kind of understanding people and relationships more, about kind of developing empathy, and it's just a look at this dynamic. So I think you could be right in saying like all the sensual shots and stuff might be a bit much, but I think it was partly just to kind of show how the relationship was for them. But I also get what you're saying. So
I feel like I'm
Yeah,
getting trapped in a
I
circle
understand that,
of
but
like
I feel like they're arguing against the political nature of films and the way that uh, people try and turn what's meant to be kind of a more of a fluid and subjective art form into something uh, academic and something to be analysed. But at the same time, there's so many things that are brought up in this film, whether it be
yeah.
relating to the film within the film to do with like drug use and things like that, or whether it to be with uh, things within Malcolm and Marie, the film, because there's stuff about kind of gender and femininity, a bit of that stuff. There's a bit about race, and I feel like I can understand that it's meant to just be offering the perspective of this relationship, these two characters. But why include all that stuff if you're not trying to have your own message or
Yeah,
kind of
because
open it up for discussion?
even if you read it at a surface level, and that this film is just trying to promote the fact that films don't need to have a message, that in itself is a message. So it's I don't think it's as simple as just this film is about two characters, because yeah, undoubtedly that is the center of the story, and that's the reason why a lot of the cinematography is just focused around like creating space and distance between the characters and moving around this like large home and everything. But it's the film is clearly trying to say something, even if that something is just nothing. And if that something's nothing, there's a lot of just noise, with like all of the other points that Malcolm brings up that like kind of clouds that, and it's I don't know. I feel like I'm getting trapped in a sort of hole of I'm trying to analyze it, and maybe it shouldn't be analyzed.
no, I
But
know what you mean. Where I think that Sam Levinson made this, and it's quite like a self-indulgent film. It was like he just wanted to vent, so a lot of the things brought up aren't really explored. He just wants to shout them, hence the characters actually just shouting them.
yeah,
And it kind of comes across as like he's trying to say something with his film, but also is annoyed that people interpret stuff from it, which is kind of counterintuitive.
well, it goes back
Yeah,
to
and
that like Tarkovsky quote where it's if 1,000 different people see the same movie, that's 1,000 different movies. Everyone is
Yeah,
inherently going to have their own interpretation of the movie, because it kind of you'll naturally relate it to your own experiences and your own life, and everyone's going to have a slightly different, for example, political leanings. So you might see some political stuff in there that might or might not have been intended to be there, but people are going to be seeing that regardless.
yeah, and I think there's a weird dichotomy that he creates between the fact that you have Malcolm, who's really passionately arguing against the politicizing the films, but at the same time, he's presented as a very irrational character, and you have Marie kind of offering other side of that, saying that um, this is how you reacting to a good review. You've got to sort of appreciate what they're saying, because there is genuinely, uh, he might think that it's not necessarily his intention, but you can't say that somebody else's perspective is wrong, and you can't say that the way that they interpret the film, just because it differs from the way you made it, means that kind of makes their perception invalid. So I feel like, I don't know. It feels, as I was saying before, it just feels like everything in this film has two sides, which I guess is kind of to its credit, because it leaves it a bit ambiguous. But at the same time, I'm not really sure whether his intention was for people to having detailed discussions about it, or just accepting it for what it was.
Yeah, and just another thought just came to my mind, and I really doubt it. This is the case, but it would be kind of funny if it was. If Sam Levinson just like did all of this sort of meta stuff, that also relates to the movie itself, just to kind of mess with people. See,
Yeah.
like make everyone get into a mental sort of logical loop like I'm in about what should I analyze this.
Well, I guess so. I mean, the film itself hasn't been getting great critics reviews, so maybe we'll make
Yeah.
another film about the bad reviews about this, and then explain that in that section. Or it should be an endless cycle of Sam Levinson
Yeah.
ranting on about stuff.
It's and I it's getting like okay, it's getting average reviews. It's sort of like I think it was a 6.7 on IMDb, which is like just above like what's supposed to be average. It's okay, it's decent, but it's not great, and I feel like it would be a lot more, because I'll say this, but inherently if you did this it would make it a sort of different movie. If you cut out a lot of the sort of um weird mixed messaging that Malcolm's trying to uh, say, if you cut a lot of that out and made it more about the characters, I feel like that would be a bit more engaging, and I don't know if it'd make it a better movie, but I don't think at the very least the weight of all this, these sort of logical paradoxes, doesn't help the movie. Because like I don't know if you want to talk about this now, if we don't want to keep talking about the messaging, but like the pacing of the movie is, I thought it was okay at the very start, but it seems kind of drawn out. Like you were watching it at 0.5 times speed. Like you can see how the story, like the proportions of the story, the ratio of like intro, first argument, second argument, and whatever, the ratio seems about right, but it seems like there's a lot of just felt like it was progressing too slowly, and like by the very end I was zoned out and a bit annoyed. So I was just like, oh, is this gonna be over? Can you just make up or like
I think
leave each other?
I think the problem is that it kind of has the pacing of like each argument right, but it's just really repetitive.
Yeah.
So it seems to be in 3 acts, where the end of each act is signified by the kissing and making up scene. Because I checked every time, and it was literally like 35 minutes, 35 minutes, 35 minutes.
You could just cut out one of the arguments then.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you could, because of the way that they all lead on to each other. I basically just think that it should have been more condensed, and maybe like a 45-minute short film or something, because when I saw that the film was an hour and 45, I was like, that's actually fairly long for what I know this is.
I know.
Because I feel like the pacing in the individual sections might not have had that many issues, but when you look at it aggregately, I feel like nothing actually really progressed. I feel like where obviously you had a lot of revelations, both in terms of the messages that we've discussed, and then also the more personal side of it with the relationship. But I can't really tell. I think it's deliberately ambiguous at the end what kind of happens when they walk outside, but I didn't really feel like much had progressed in terms of comparing the end and the start. And I feel like
Yeah,
that was just because all of the arguments, those three main core discussions that they have, are resolved, and then the tension builds back up and then resolved. And then it just means that you don't really know where you're finishing at the end of the film,
it
in my
feels like
opinion.
it felt like when you're in a real argument with someone, and I mean, this will happen to everyone, but I think it happens to me a bit faster. I'll just get really tired, and there'll be a point where I'm just like, it's not worth arguing anymore because we're just repeating the same points over and over. And it just felt like it did that. And by the end, nothing really new was happening, and they were just recycling points. And so, with that sort of annoyance and the fact that you've been going for like an hour and a half in the film, um, just sat in one room arguing, you really want some sort of satisfying conclusion to like put a close to it. It's like, there are a few ways you could go about that. Like either Malcolm like actually apologizes and realizes that he can't do anything without Marie, and they make up, or she walks out and he's like assessing his life choices, or even just like by the end of it, like even if they just went to sleep a bit like quicker without arguing as much, it was just, and then at the very end, you just still had that sort of unresolved tension. I don't know, like I feel like maybe the ambiguous ending could have worked if it was a 45-minute film, but by the end of it, you were just like, the more your time spent arguing, the more satisfying a conclusion you're kind of wanting. Sort of wrap it up.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the only counterpoint I'd have to the issues with the pacing and the fact that it was kind of drawn out a lot was that um whereas Malcolm's character, you kind of felt like he didn't really have much change throughout the film. He was kind of quite stagnant, and he was always presented as quite rational. Whereas Marie, she kind of reserved her motives a bit more, so you didn't really right at the start you see there's clearly something wrong, but it doesn't. And then she brings up that she's infuriated that she wasn't thanked in the speech. But then you later learn that uh, that's because a lot of the plot was based on her own past. And then later she brings up the fact that she wasn't cast, and that there's kind of a bit of a question about that because she gives that. Well, you can't really tell at the time whether it's real, but then they later reveal that that was meant to just be a performance, and he's kind of
Yeah.
asking why didn't you do that in the audition, and I feel like you learn more about Marie's character as it goes along, and I did like her character a lot more than Malcolm's because I feel like not much really changed, but I guess that comes back to that issue that uh, when you look at it as a whole, there's not really that much of a difference between the beginning and end.
I feel like Marie became a bit more humble by the end of the film. Like in I don't know, humble's the wrong word because she became more indignant that she wasn't cast, but like at the very start, she was obviously like being a bit sour and not telling him what was wrong. But by the end, she'd completely just laid everything on the table, every single issue she had with him, and clearly explained it, and he was clearly understanding it. Whereas Malcolm kind of just, I feel like Malcolm just kind of pointed out individual things that were wrong with her, and then proceeded to sort of say that they were like he was kind of didn't need her, and she was for example when like that bath scene, when he was talking about his ex-girlfriends, like he definitely took it too far, and Marie kind of, I feel like Marie wanted to him to understand and he wanted to win, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think also something that I thought about as it was going along is sort of you left to question why is she staying in this relationship. There's a, I guess there's the interpretation that he brings up about the fact that, well, they kind of rely on each other. You know, she has that speech near the end where she's saying all the different reasons that he should have shown his gratitude to her, uh, both professionally and personally, but also, she was quite reliant on him when she was going through her problems with like relapses and trying to recover from a drug addiction. But then you also have the idea that she's kind of being manipulated and gaslighted to an extent by Malcolm because he's
Yeah.
kind of trying to reduce the significance of the points that she's bringing up. And he's always, as you were saying, he's trying to win the argument where she's, well, I wouldn't really say she's trying to resolve it fully because, she's the one that kind of instigates it. But
She wants to be heard.
I def-
Like she wants to be understood.
yeah. So I kind of like that aspect of it, but I just don't think
It's
as a
like,
whole it works particularly well.
yeah, it's like that scene after she'd put on the little performance about her relapsing. And he says, "Why didn't you do that in the audition?" And the argument just a couple minutes before was along the lines of like, he fought for everything. He fought to get the movie made at the production company. He fought to get the right actresses. He fought to like make his own creative decisions, but he didn't fight to get her in the film. And it's you kind of get the impression that like if someone is just like is just clean off drugs, is still in like rehab, like they're not going to be in the best frame of mind to sort of make decisions like that. If he thought that she was going to be good in the film, then I feel like he should have been fighting for her to get the audition, like telling her, no, you should audition for this, and not. And I didn't leave the film understanding why he didn't, but there was clearly a reason, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Marie's motivations were just a lot clearer and also just kind of, what was it? They seemed a lot more nice because at the end she's just like, I just want, that she's trying to be like his best partner he's ever had and that she just wants to be like loved by him. It seems a lot more genuine and understandable motives, whereas you just have no idea for Malcolm. So I felt like Marie was definitely just the better character.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised we've not actually talked about the performances yet, or not that I remember.
Yeah.
But I guess the only thing there is to say is that good, very good.
They were good with what they were
well
given.
Done, Zendaya and John David Washington.
They were.
Round of applause.
Yeah. It was they did a particular style where it was undoubtedly amazing acting, but as Ollie kind of said earlier in the episode, like it's not necessarily realistic.
It's more like stage show.
Yeah,
the whole thing felt like it should have been a stage show. But
yeah.
I get that weren't any films coming out, so it was good to make one. Because I think this was the first film that was fully produced within like the lockdown.
Yeah.
And following guidelines and everything. There were only ever like 12 people on set. They still had a chef though, I noticed. Gotta have the chef.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that. in a weird way, those kind of circumstances enabled this film to be possible, because it's not. If you had access to more, then you'd probably use those resources. Whereas if you're just restricted to literally the bare minimum with in terms of actors and set and everything, and I guess that to a degree limits the story, but I do think it allows for more interesting choices to be made, which is especially evident in the acting and the kind of the cinematography and the choices that the director made. But yeah, I do feel like the characters themselves. I don't know. I feel like this, as you were saying about comparing it to a stage play, it was I think it works well in kind of isolation, but I don't really know what would happen after this. Like, I don't really know what it sets up for the future of these characters, and I don't really want to know, to be honest. I feel like this argument in itself was quite engaging, and it was like quite a good insight into these characters' lives, but I don't think it really left a lot of options open for the future because he didn't really set anything up.
Yeah.
Frequently asked questions for Malcolm and Marie. Will there be a sequel?
No, probably not. There shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But yeah, they, there's a thing of like restrictions. What's it called? Restrictions breed creativity. Something like that. Limitations. I don't know. Everyone's always like, give yourself restricted options, then you'll do cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's what
did
people say,
I did say
right?
earlier in the episode that it didn't like service the story, but I will give credit where credit's due. The film looked really, really pretty. I love the fact it was on film. The black and white was very striking. A lot of the shots were sort of reminiscent of like that Haunting of Hill House episode, like episode 6, where it would just sort of follow them around for extended periods of time. There weren't like a load of unnecessary cuts. It would only do it when it kind of serviced the dialogue. I love the setting. It was in like a house, and I like the fact that when they'd kind of finished arguing, it would always like give them physical space, and they started arguing again, it would like make the space smaller, and they get quite close to each other again. I really like that.
Yeah, because
then
a lot of the stuff whilst they were arguing was very claustrophobic, whereas when you had, before they start arguing, there's obviously that distance between them when they've just started and he's eating the mac and cheese and she's gone to the bathroom or something, and then it was a bit random, the bit where she walks outside. I feel like that the
yeah.
first time when she goes to that tree, I felt like that dragged on a bit too long. It felt a bit unnecessary, but
Yeah,
I guess that was when they weren't arguing and there was kind of that distance again.
Yeah, the concept was nice. Like the house seemed to suddenly get a lot bigger because he couldn't find her, and it was more like sort of, where have you gone? I've lost you. And it's also metaphorically because I'm a bad person, you know. But yeah, that definitely did drag. Also, I'll just briefly say the music. I didn't notice much of a sound like a score, but the soundtrack. I mean, the songs are obviously bops, but I think it was used really well because. Do you remember? So it must have been after the first argument when he like puts on like this soul song, and it's along the lines of something like, "I'm sorry, I've been bad," and
those are the exact lyrics.
yeah. I mean, I kind of noticed it a bit more because I watched with subtitles and it had the lyrics on screen, and it just I really liked that because it kind of highlights how much of a sort of shallow or shall we say inauthentic character Malcolm is, because
Marie then does it later though.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
but you know, I like that first bit the most. I feel like the second bit she was just kind of using his own tactic back at him to show how shallow he was. I don't think that was serious the second time. I
Yeah.
just liked it. Just like if I play my girlfriend who is mad at me a song that's about being sorry, then all will be forgiven. Alexa, play Justin Bieber Sorry.
Because I know that you very early on in the episode you made the comparison to Marriage Story, but I also think some aspects of this in a weird way kind of reminded me of when we did Adaptation, because as you're saying with the music, it feels like the director, I don't know if this was his intention, but when Charlie Kaufman and that was trying to kind of play up these tropes of Hollywood, but at the same time kind of more subtly subvert them by kind of making fun of them. I feel like that was one of the things that he was able to do with the music, because as you were saying, I'm not sure whether that's meant to be more of a you're meant to have more of an understanding of the characters through that, or if it's meant to be more of an artistic kind of directorial choice. I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Okay, surprisingly, we've got to 42 minutes, so unless there's...
How dare we? How dare
Does anyone have anything else to kind of say? I feel like...
I'll just say, if you there's a video on YouTube by Karsten Rundquist that really goes on about how much he hates this film. So if you haven't had enough of that in this episode, then you can go and watch that.
Yeah, this has been quite an intense episode, actually. I feel like this is the most debates we've had on a podcast episode.
Yeah, we're arguing exactly like Malcolm.
Damn.
Oh, we just need a bit of shouting now.
You are intolerable, both of you. Even Ollie, who's mainly agreed with my points.
Thank you.
This whole time, I saw Sam Levinson in a heart-shaped bathtub. I've got pictures.
Yeah,
I will
it has
say
been
the
a
tone
pretty
of this.
intense one. Like, if you read the description of the episode, you'll see that Ben cried for 2 hours after watching this, because it was clearly a direct criticism on us as the professional critics that we are.
I did. Yeah. Oh yeah, it actually says that. Okay, I'll squeeze one last thing in before we go to ratings. The film's tone is obviously mainly just kind of about the arguments and stuff, but there were moments that I found funny and I did laugh at, like
Yes.
the bit where he's Malcolm's ranting for like 6 minutes straight on about like the old white woman's positive review of him. Like that kind of got hilarious by the end, and the profanities he was using, and then also Marie's reaction to the heart-shaped bathtub. that was kind of funny. It was humorous. Laugh.
Humorous.
Because I feel like although the tone had some issues, I feel like that was kind of necessary to relieve a lot of the tension that was created. So you didn't want all of it being really intense.
Yeah.
Well, despite the fact that most of it was, but
Okay, rating time.
I'm surprised because I thought like I didn't like this film as much as I thought, and I thought I was going to be the lowest one after hearing you two bag at it for ages, and now I've got no idea what it's going to be.
I think this is a really difficult one, because as I was saying about, it seems like the majority of the stuff we've talked about, you can kind of make an argument either way. But at the same time, I don't think, if you look at Birdemic, that we gave a 5 because it was like 10 enjoyment, 1 quality. I don't think it's quite that severe, but I feel like
okay, so
just because of some of the issues, it's not going to be like really high up.
Yeah, again, like everything else in the film, there's a positive and a negative. Like the positive, it was thought provoking. The negative is I'm getting quite annoyed, stuck in this logical loop.
Yeah, it was thought provoking, but was the point meant to be that it wasn't meant to be thought
Yeah,
provoking? Like,
I'm definitely going lower than 7. Um, give 9 a 6.9.
you you did.
I know. I mean, heavy metal's not really a great one to compare it with, but
They're exactly the same in tone, Ben. What are you on about?
well, I mean, problem with Birdemic because I actually enjoyed Birdemic a bit more than this, but quality-wise, this was clearly better. I'm gonna go 6.2 because
ooh,
that's quite low. Well, given our median, but because just mainly because it could have been better, but it
Yeah,
just wasn't sure on what it was trying to do, and it kind of annoyed me in the end. But it's not lower
yeah,
because the production was great, the cinematography was great, and yeah.
yeah. I feel like this film had a lot of potential, but didn't necessarily fulfill a lot of it. And but I don't know. I feel like it was an interesting concept, but quite a frustrating film for me. But at the same time, that did enable a lot of discussion, which I think might bump it up a little bit. Uh, um, but I'm thinking maybe like a 6.7.
this is really funny because after all that, I'm giving it a 6.0.
Oh,
I was like on the other side of you two,
I thought you were
supporting it,
defending it
and
the
I'm
whole
giving
time.
it the lowest. But
Yeah,
no,
you seem to be the
I
one that
just
was
agree that,
defending it.
well, it's because there were some things that I felt needed defending,
Oh,
but I
thank you,
thought it was
Tom. Thank you, Tom. It's a
very
solid 6.3. No rounding.
welcome. It's just, it was very self-indulgent, and the script just had so many problems and like weird tone changes. Like when he goes on about the review, it's like Marie suddenly forgets that she was annoyed at him, and I just didn't really like the character of Malcolm, and a lot of things just annoyed me. But there were also, you know, the cinematography and acting kind of bumps it up. But yeah, I'm giving it a 6. Go watch Marriage Story instead.
Yeah. Okay, so before Tom speeds on to the recommendations, as always, we have a submission spotlight section that no one ever submits anything to. Submit something, please. It could be music, could be short film, could be some work of writing. If you've done a book, self-published it on Amazon, we've done that before. If you've released music, we've done that before. If you've got a 2-minute short horror movie you've done on YouTube, we've done that before. Send it in via the contact form on our website, or entertainmentofexcellence@gmail.com, or just DM us on social media at ERV Podcast on both Instagram and Twitter, or just leave a comment somewhere. We're absolutely desperate. We'll find it somehow. We'll dedicate a 10-minute segment to
you. We'll hunt you down.
We'll hunt you down and we'll steal it off you, and we'll give you some constructive criticism. Terms and conditions apply.
We'll sneak into your house in the middle of the night, swipe your submission, and then you'll receive it back with about 100 post-it notes of our insane mental scrawlings of constructive criticism. And it'll look terrifying, but when you'll read it and you'll go, oh, some good points raised there.
Yeah.
And you'll never forget it, I'll tell you that.
Yee.
But you may want to change your locks afterwards.
I mean,
if you want,
sure.
if you want that burden, then try and contact us.
Yeah, recommendations? Who wants to go first? Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Nah, actually, I don't want to. Nah, I will. Don't worry. I watched the film Prisoners with Hugh Jackman and Jake Gyllenhaal because I just love Jake Gyllenhaal. He's great, and he seems to like choosing to do good film. And so it follows. So there's two daughters get kidnapped, and it follows the detective trying to find them and the father of one of the daughters, and it looks at what would you do to try and get your daughter back, and kind of the way that tragedies like this can corrupt people, and as well as just being like a really entertaining thriller. So it is fairly long. It's 2.5 hours, but it's paced pretty well, and there's lots of twists and turns where you go like, oh, is this thing going to be this person? And oh, look, it's that thing. I bet that's going to turn up again. And you kind of get to piece it together as you go along, and it's very entertaining, very gritty, but it's definitely worth a watch. So you should watch Prisoners. Do you agree, Ollie?
I mean, I haven't seen it, but sure.
Yeah, you should watch it then.
Yeah. I'm watching
Now.
it right now. Yeah,
Good.
I am.
Good.
Yeah. Do you have a recommendation?
Me.
Yeah.
Either of you?
I think I'm going to take the leap and give a recommendation. So this one's technically been in the work for like nearly 3 months now. It's called
Is it time?
Yeah. So it's the X-Files, the TV series.
Never heard of it. What's that?
It is the TV series that has the theme song from the Illuminati memes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't
Never
want
heard of
to I didn't really want to do it until I'd finished it initially, because what if one of the later seasons is terrible and that ruins it for me. But like, I'm on season 5 now and I'm still invested in it. So the basic premise is it's just a show about 2 FBI agents investigating the paranormal. One of them's Fox Mulder, who's obviously believes in like UFOs and stuff, because he's much more open-minded because his sister was abducted by aliens when he was younger. And there's his partner Dana Scully, who is a lot more rational, and brings a sort of scientific perspective because she works as a doctor. And so there's sort of 2 things going on simultaneously. There's this overarching mythology that goes along, that runs throughout the seasons, where it's basically they discover a sort of government plot, and more is revealed in like mythology related episodes throughout the seasons. Like, I'm on season 5 and it still hasn't got like too close to exactly what's going on. So if you've got this could either really intrigue you or maybe possibly annoy you, because I have seen some reviews online where it's like, they've just been teasing us for 5 seasons, like, oh, why haven't we got to the good bits yet? And it's like, yeah, but I know equally just sort of, I guess it's kind of similar to Doctor Who in this sense, where like the majority of the episodes are sort of one-off monster of the week stuff, where they'll just investigate some stuff, and it won't have any lasting effect. Those are like they're like hit or miss. Most are hits. Occasionally you'll have some like filler, as with all shows, but I really enjoyed it. And like, especially with those ones, you can just sort of have them on in the background and like do something else, and you'll progress through the seasons quite quickly. It's a good watch. It's written really well. I think it had a little bit of a shaky start, I think, where like some of it was like very overtly like 90s TV, and the dialogue a bit and suffered from that. But certainly by the second and third season, it found its footing and kind of established itself as like the sort of pop culture icon it's sort of come to be. So there's 9 seasons of its original run. There's 2 movies, one that takes place chronologically between the 5th and 6th season. I can't remember what the second one is. And then recently, I say recently, it was 2016 and 2018, they revived it for 2 more series. So there's 11 series in total, which is quite a bit to keep you going. That's my recommendation for the next 11 weeks. There you go.
Do you have any, Ollie?
Yeah.
Good.
I'm going to be recommending the Snide. No, I'm kidding. I'm honestly not sure if anyone's recommended this before, but if you enjoy films about people falling out, like we clearly did today, then I'm sure you'll enjoy Rush.
I've seen Rush.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed that it wasn't about the band.
It's so sad.
I don't think I did recommend it, actually. I think I watched it a while ago.
So basically it's about this rivalry between 2. Well, I think they originally start out in like Formula 3, but then they work their way up to Formula 1. It's based on a true story between James Hunt and Niki Lauda, and it's I don't really have that much to say, to be honest. It's just really quite fast paced. It's got some really cool like actual race sequences, but then there's a lot of the personal stuff going on behind the scenes, because if you don't know, I guess this is a spoiler, but it's something that actually happened. So Niki Lauda was involved in like quite a serious crash, but then he bounces right back and starts racing, and I think it's the same season he carries on. So you kind of get that resilience of Lauda, and then that's juxtaposed with Hunt, who's a bit more of a playboy, and he likes to celebrate with, whereas Lauda's kind of more committed and dedicated to the craft. So I think it's a really cool exploration of this rivalry, and I think a bit that particularly stood out for me, I think it's near the end. Well, it's like the closing scene where they're kind of saying that this rivalry was necessary, and that, it kind of brought out the best in both of them, which I think is a pretty cool idea. So yeah, watch Rush.
It's good.
It's good.
Good.
Cool. Nice.
Are we going to end then?
We are indeed going to end, but before we end, we're going to tell you what we're doing next week. We are doing...
Nah, I don't think we will.
We are doing an episode.
We are. In that episode, we are doing a film.
We are doing a film with a title.
It's
Is...
Gone Girl.
Gone.
Question
Where's
mark.
the girl
Gone Girl.
gone?
Yeah, it's gone.
The girl's gone. That's so sad.
Where? I guess we'll
So we'll
find out
find
next
out.
week.
Just off for a drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would
Tune
be
in next
pretty
week.
entertaining film.
Yeah, tune in. Tune in next week to see where the girl has gone. Alright, see you.
Alright, see ya.
Yeah, that's it.